What's going on, guys? Mr. Octagonal here. Now, today we have the next episode of the 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast series. Yes, I'm not uploading a mock draft on a Saturday. I think that's a first. So, we're going to be doing our second NBA mock draft of the year. Sorry, I haven't done more yet. Once the NFL draft concludes, then my main focus will be on the NBA. So, obviously, the draft lottery does happen. I did not have a lottery because if I did, and a team like the Timberwolves won the first pick, that just isn't happening. So this is by record as of Saturday, so it's pretty official. No trades. I might do trades in the future. So without further ado, let's get right into it. With the first pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the New York Knicks select Zion Williamson from Duke University. This should not come as a surprise to anyone. Williamson is the clear-cut number one player in this draft class. He's so good at everything. Obviously, the frame, the athleticism, his explosiveness. You just have the full package with him. He's versatile on both ends of the floor. I really like the fact that he can defend inside as well as on the perimeter. He's a pretty good ball handler for his size, and he could potentially run an offense if he becomes good at it. I think he's a good enough passer. Obviously, he's very graceful around the basket despite his gigantic size. I'd say, obviously, the biggest weakness with him is his jump shot. That's really his only problem. And he's not like Ben Simmons. He can somewhat shoot, but he's not particularly good at it. And Zion Williamson gets a jump shot, he will win an MVP in his career. I think this is a home run for the Knicks, as it looks like they will be the favorites to have the number one odds for this pick, since the Suns and Cavs are doing terrible jobs of tanking. They're winning too many games. The Knicks aren't. So I'd be shocked if the Knicks don't have the number one odd during the draft lottery, and since it's the NBA, chances are the Knicks are going to end up with the pick, since obviously they want to have Zion in that big market. And with the addition of Zion, that could propel someone like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, or maybe a sleeper like Jimmy Butler to sign with the New York Knicks. I think if the Knicks have this pick, it's the obvious selection, and it's a home run for them. Second pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Phoenix Suns select Ja Morant from Murray State University. Murray State clinched their bid in the NCAA tournament the other day, which means we will get to see Ja Morant, which is very exciting. Morant is an extremely explosive point guard. He's very athletic, very quick. Reminds me a lot of John Wall coming out of Kentucky. They both don't have great jump shots coming out of college, but Walls sort of did develop, and I expect the same for Morant. Very solid on the defensive end of the glass. Obviously, they can both throw it down. Phenomenal passers. Morant leads the NCAA in assists per game by a mile, and he can score the ball well as well. Very explosive, gets to the basket well, and overall, I think this is a must-have for Phoenix unless Zion's on the board, as they obviously need a point guard and a lineup of Ja Morant, Devin Booker, whatever they do it forward with Josh Jackson, Mikal Bridges, TJ Warren, and then DeAndre Ayton at center. That's pretty nice. The third pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select R.J. Barrett from Duke University. Barrett is the clear best player on the board, and this is a great selection for Cleveland. They need pretty much everything except for maybe point guard. I'm personally a huge believer in Colin Sexton, but Barrett is a more pure player than Zion Williamson, and what I mean by that is I feel like he's more, I would say, prototypical for the NBA, and that's not bad for Zion that he's unique, but for Barrett, it's easier to evaluate him. He's definitely a better scorer, I would say. Maybe better is not the right word, but he's better from all three levels, and what I mean by that is he has a better jump shot than Zion Williamson, and Barrett's jump shot is not even that good. I would say it's very inconsistent. However, some days he really does have a good jump shot. Obviously, some days he doesn't. He's a very explosive athlete as well, and I think he's a very well-rounded player. He's a pretty good passer, solid rebounder, okay on defense, and overall, I think him and Colin Sexton can be a great tandem in Cleveland. Fourth pick, the Chicago Bulls select Cam Reddish from Duke University. Yes, they did trade for Otto Porter Jr., who's been playing really well, but in 5 years from now, is Porter going to be the future of the Bulls at small forward? I don't know. He might ask for too much again, and I mean, I can't blame him for asking too much. But the Bulls are set pretty much everywhere else except point guard, I think. I don't know if Chris Dunn's the long-term guy. He's just too much of a liability on the offensive end of the floor. But they have Zach LaVine at the 2, and at the big spots, they have Larry Markkinen and Wendell Carter. I think those are 3 solidified spots, and there aren't many great point guards on the board. Plus, Reddish is the clear-cut best player available. He can stretch the floor, phenomenal jump shooter. Yeah, he hasn't quite lived up to expectations at Duke, but that's because he has 2 superstars with him. And I think if he went anywhere else, he probably would be putting up much bigger stats. Reddish has played solid in the absence of Zion Williamson, and I think the Bulls are getting themselves someone who can score from all 3 levels. Debatably the best shooter in this draft class. Maybe not the best. I would say he's a little bit inconsistent like Barrett. He's definitely better than Barrett, but I would say he's the best player in this draft class who has a good jump shot, who's considered an elite prospect. The 5th pick, the Atlanta Hawks select Keldon Johnson from Kentucky. This draft class is not deep, and I would say outside of those top 4 guys, there's a lot of question marks, and in most draft classes, Johnson would not be going in the top 5. However, I do have him going here, and he's a pretty good player all around. He's a very solid athlete, and he's been quite good for Kentucky this year, putting up around 14 points a game with 6 boards. He's a well-rounded player. He's a solid scorer. He's not great at it, but he's also not bad. He has an inconsistent but decent 3-point jump shot. And in conclusion, the Hawks aren't getting themselves someone with superstar potential, but that's fine because they had the Mavericks pick, and hint, hint, they're getting someone with superstar potential. The 6th pick, the Memphis Grizzlies select Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech. Culver has emerged as a superstar this year as a sophomore, and watch out for Texas Tech in the tournament. They got some guys who can shoot the ball with ease. I know this as a Kansas fan from a couple weekends ago. Don't remind me of that, but they got some guys who can shoot the ball. Culver is a bona fide superstar at the college level. They could really make a run in the tournament, but looking at Culver, phenomenal player. He's had an insane sophomore year. He has been this Texas Tech team. I shouldn't say that. They have some other good players, but he's definitely the star of their team. 18.3 points, 6.2 boards, 3.6 assists. He's been shooting the ball pretty well. 34% from 3 is not great, but as the main scorer, he doesn't actually shoot a lot of threes in comparison to the rest of his jump shots. 14 shots per game almost, and only 4 of them are threes. So he's not going to be spotting up from 3 super often, which isn't really the way the Grizzlies play basketball. I think he's a solid fit, good on the defensive end of the glass. He can be a very nice wing presence, good slasher, pretty athletic, and overall, I think this is a nice pick for them. With the 7th pick, the Atlanta Hawks select Bol Bol from Oregon. As I said, the Hawks are getting someone from the Dallas pick with superstar potential, and I absolutely think that fits Bol Bol. I've seen him go in the teens in a lot of mock drafts. However, I think teams will wise up and realize that we can be getting ourselves a star here, especially Atlanta, who's likely going to have 2 picks in the top 10 unless Dallas tanks really hard and falls in the top 5, which I don't think will happen. It could happen, but I'd be a little bit surprised. Bol Bol had a phenomenal year at Oregon up until his foot injury. I think it was a foot injury back in December. And I think the big question with him is his durability. Will he be able to stay on the court? He's pretty injury prone. He has a very lean frame. He stands around 7'3", but he's not particularly heavy. I want to say he's like 210, 220 pounds, which is not big at all. He averaged around 21 and 9 this year for the Ducks. He has a jump shot. He shot over 50% from 3, 13 for 25, which isn't a ton of three-pointers, but it's more than a lot of players. It's not like he went 2 for 3. Oh, he shot 66% from 3. 2 for 3. Wow, big deal. But Bol Bol, for his size, he has a smooth jump shot, smooth on the offensive end of the court. I think he needs to work on his defense. He needs to work on his rebounding. Only 9 rebounds a game for someone of his size. No, that can't happen. He needs to be consistently averaging a double-double. And he needs to get stronger, needs to get more bulkier, needs to be less weak. more of an inside dominant presence in the paint on both ends. And if he does that, he'll be a better player, and he's less likely to get injured. So, win-win. With the 8th pick, the Washington Wizards select Nasir Little from North Carolina. Little's had an up-and-down season, as he has been consistently coming off the bench, but UNC is a good team. They have guys like Luke May at forward, so I guess it's not a total insult. However, Little is not a good offensive player, at least right now. Particularly not a good scorer. He can't really shoot. He's pretty athletic, and I would say that's his strongest suit of his offensive game. But his bread and butter is on defense. Very good on the defensive end on the glass. Hustler. Overall, he has potential to be an all-defensive type player, and I think that's what the Wizards need. John Wall, decent on defense, but he's not going to be there next year. Bradley Beal, not good on defense. Otto Porter, when he was there, not particularly good on defense, and they don't really have a small forward anyway. Little reminds me a lot of Justice Winslow coming out of college. Winslow wasn't particularly good up until this year, where he's been more of a point guard for the Heat, and I could see struggles early on for Nasir Little. However, if he can live up to his potential, he'll be a good player. 9th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Jackson Hayes, a big man from Texas who ended up winning Big 12 Freshman of the Year, only putting up around 10-5. Isn't incredible stats, however, he did a lot of the dirty work for Texas, and I would say he's a very solid defender, 2.3 blocks a game, only in 23.6 minutes. So sort of like Jaren Jackson, just not as good on offense, not as versatile on defense, doesn't have a jump shot as Hayes did not attempt a three-pointer all year. But I like his athletic ceiling, more athletic than someone like Jaren Jackson. And the Pelicans are likely going to be losing Anthony Davis this offseason. They're likely going to be losing Julius Randle this offseason. So they need to get themselves a big man. And Hayes has risen up draft boards this year after not being talked about at all during the preseason. Solid pick for New Orleans. The 10th pick, the Los Angeles Lakers select Romeo Langford from Indiana University. This year has been a disaster for the Lakers. So do they want to get someone who they know will be good? Someone like a Rui Hachimura? Or get themselves someone with superstar potential like Romeo Langford? I know the more realistic option might be Rui Hachimura. However, with Romeo Langford on the board at 10, it's hard to pass up. Romeo reminds me a lot of Donovan Mitchell. Both are very explosive, very athletic. They're both high flyers, and they're both very good scorers. Langford has a very inconsistent three. However, unlike some of these other players, he can shoot the three. He's a very solid offensive player. However, I don't know if you necessarily want him running an offense, at least yet. And that's not going to be an issue in LA. They have Lonzo and LeBron, who are very good playmakers, whereas Langford isn't really much of a passer, not phenomenal on defense. And as I said, he reminds me so much of Donovan Mitchell. And I think Romeo, I'm not saying he'll be as good as Donovan Mitchell, but I think he definitely has a chance to. One of my particular favorite prospects in this draft class. Romeo sometimes holds the ball too long and really focuses on making plays for himself. But with having stars around him, guys like LeBron, potentially another max player, potentially Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, both those are somewhat unlikely, but there's still a chance. And they have some other talented young players who could develop, like Lonzo, Kuzma. Hopefully Brandon Ingram gets better of his blood clot. Certainly scary, but I think this is a very interesting pick for the Lakers. The 11th pick, the Charlotte Hornets select DeAndre Hunter from Virginia. Hunter was one of the main reasons why Virginia lost in the tournament last year to UMBC. His presence wasn't there at all, literally, because he missed the game due to an injury. And had he been healthy, I think the result of that could have been very different. But as a sophomore, Hunter has been extraordinarily good. He's a solid scorer. I think he's better on defense than offense. But I'd say he's definitely Virginia's best player this year. And Virginia's probably the best team in the country. Their only two losses have come to Duke. Hunter is a very well-rounded player. I don't think he has superstar potential, but I think he has a chance to be solid. Very Charlotte Hornets-esque pick, which I don't know if that's the way they want to go. However, this is the type of player that Charlotte likes to get. So, welcome to Charlotte, Hunter, where you'll rot on the bench for 5 years. Okay, maybe not rot on the bench, but maybe rot during the month of May when your team's not in the playoffs. I don't know. With the 12th pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga. The Japan native has been excellent this year for the Zags. One of the main reasons why they're one of the best teams in the country and should definitely get a 1 seed for, what would this be, the 3rd straight year? I don't know if they had a 1 seed or a 2 seed when they made the championship. I know they were last year. But Hachimura has been phenomenal for them. Hit the game winner against Duke back in the Maui Invitational. Solid score, pretty solid jump shot. And he's solid on defense as well. Doesn't give you the upside of someone like a Romeo Langford. However, I don't know if the Timberwolves necessarily need that. They have themselves a superstar in Karl Anthony Towns. They have Andrew Wiggins, who they hope they can develop. And then they have some other talented players like Robert Covington, Dario Saric, Derrick Rose, even though he's not probably part of their future. Sorry, D-Rose. This pick could be a point guard, someone like a Darius Garland. However, I don't know if Minnesota wants to take the risk, and I would assume they'd rather compete in the West early on, and that can be Hachimura, who I think early on can have a really nice bench role, and then could slide in at forward, whether Andrew Wiggins moves down to shooting guard, or Dario Saric / Taj Gibson isn't the starter. With the 13th pick, the Orlando Magic select Darius Garland from Vanderbilt. Certainly a huge risk for Orlando, as I don't know if they want to necessarily be taking a risk. I think they should. They need to get themselves a superstar. They had Vucevic, who made the All-Star team this year, likely gone. Aaron Gordon, probably not an All-Star caliber player, maybe 17-7 type player. Mo Bamba, very good on defense, needs to work on offense. Jonathan Isaac, giant question mark. Markelle Fultz, giant question mark. Yes, Fultz is a point guard, however, I don't expect him to be the long-term guy. He's not going to be playing this year. And with Darius Garland's upside on the board, it's hard to pass up here at 13. Garland only played a couple games this year at Vanderbilt before getting injured, but he showed a lot of flashes that he can facilitate their offense, and I think this could be a very interesting pick for Orlando. With the 14th pick, the Boston Celtics select Brandon Clarke from Gonzaga. Not really being talked about a lot, however, he's a very talented player and someone who I expect Boston to likely trade if they get him. Boston has a bunch of first-round picks. I would be sort of shocked if they keep them all. And Clarke, I think a lot of teams are probably interested in him. His just well-roundedness, solid offensive player, putting around 16.6 points a game on extremely efficient shooting, around 69%. He's very good inside on both ends of the glass, 3.2 blocks a game, which is incredible. He is a very good defensive player, and I think the Celtics could potentially use him off their bench. A very talented defensive player. They have a good perimeter defender in Marcus Smart. However, not a lot of their other players are great on defense. I guess Al Horford is, but Kyrie isn't. Gordon Hayward isn't great on defense. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they're still working on it. So getting someone who is phenomenal on that end of the floor, I think makes a ton of sense for Boston. He's been proven, and yeah, he's an insane defender, one of the best in this draft class. 15th pick, the Miami Heat select Tre Jones from Duke University, the younger brother of... Is he still on the Timberwolves? Tyus Jones. I have no clue if he's still on the Timberwolves. All we need to know is that he was a bust. I mean, he was like the 24th pick or something, but he was still a bust. And meanwhile, Tre Jones, I don't think he'll be a bust. I think he'll be better than his brother. I think he's led Duke's offense very well. He's run the offense extremely, extremely solid. And the Heat, they could use a point guard. Goran Dragic, I believe, has a player option for this year. If he accepts it, he'll only have one more year left on his deal. If not, he's a free agent. Dragic is not getting any younger. I believe he's missed a decent amount of time this year, and he's been starting to regress a little bit. So I think the Heat need to get themselves their point guard after him. And with Tre Jones on the board, very solid value selection. With the 16th pick, the Brooklyn Nets select Jontay Porter from Missouri. Porter is a stretch big man. He has a very solid jump shot, shot 36% from 3 last year as a freshman. He did tear his ACL, has not played at all this year, and that's a huge risk. However, at 6'11", he's not great on defense. I would say he's more of an offensive player, sort of like his brother Michael Porter, just Michael Porter is more of a wing, whereas Jontay Porter is more of a big guy. I think this is a pick that the Nets would absolutely love. They have great players at the point guard and the wing spots with D'Angelo Russell, Caris LeVert, and my boy Rodions Kurucs, who I loved coming out of, where was he from? Like Latvia? I forget where he was from, but I really liked him last year in the second round, and he's proved that to me, and I traded for him in my King series, and D'Lo, so there you go. They also have Jared Allen at center, phenomenal defensive player, very solid in the paint on offense too, so now they just need a stretch big guy who can space the floor for guys like Caris LeVert, like D'Angelo Russell, like Spencer Dinwiddie, like maybe Dzanan Musa, who's shown some potential as a shooter. I think this pick makes so much sense for the Nets, and they have to do it. The 17th pick, the Detroit Pistons select Kevin Porter Jr. from USC. As you all know, I'm a Pistons fan. If they did this, I would be ecstatic. As the Pistons, they don't really have that young star. They don't have a lot of great young players. Luke Kennard, no. Kyrie Thomas, I like. He hasn't really gotten a lot of playing time. Stanley Johnson didn't work out. Thon Maker, Svi Mykhailiuk, we'll see. But outside of Blake and Drummond, the Pistons don't really have much of an identity. And both of them, especially Drummond, aren't necessarily superstars. Maybe you could say Blake. I would say that's a stretch. Drummond, he's far from a superstar. He's just a big guy who can grab boards, good in the paint, pretty good on defense. So the Pistons need to take a risk, and someone with Porter's upside here at 17 makes a ton of sense. Porter is an athletic freak. He showed a lot of flashes when he played for USC this year. He's missed a lot of time due to suspension. I think he might have been hurt, if I'm not mistaken, too. But he has a lot of potential, and upside-wise, he could be a top 5 pick. However, his limited and inconsistent college production have him falling at 17. The 18th pick, the San Antonio Spurs select Sekou Doumbouya from France. Really like the fit here. I think Greg Popovich could have one last project, and I think that could be Doumbouya, as Popovich does plan on retiring within the next few years. Doumbouya has a lot of upside. He's definitely not Luka Doncic coming out of Europe, but he's been solid this year for the Euro Cup. In 23 games, he's put up 6.5 points, 3 boards, and around 16 minutes a game. Not insane, but he's been pretty efficient. I originally viewed him as a wing towards the beginning of the year. However, I would say, yeah, he does shoot the three a decent bit. Most of his shots are actually threes. I would say his size and his efficiency in the basket, I would say because of that, maybe he's more of a stretch 4 who has offensive potential. Decent on defense, 0.6 steals, 0.5 blocks, and overall he's very raw. I think he should probably return to Europe for a year, continue to develop his game, and then Greg Popovich is going to absolutely love developing him, and Popovich can go out with developing yet another all-star picked in the late first round. 19th pick, the Boston Celtics select Bruno Fernando from Maryland. Remember the last time they picked a center from Maryland? Didn't necessarily work out at all. However, this time I think it will work out. Fernando, very solid interior presence. He's had some solid production the past 2 years for the Maryland Terrapins. And Al Horford getting older, nearing the end of his contract. He's not really showing signs of regressing yet. However, I think it will happen, as Fernando isn't necessarily as graceful of a player as Al Horford. Fernando is still pretty raw. However, with some developing, I think he can potentially be a very solid player for Boston or somebody else if he gets traded. With the 20th pick, the Utah Jazz select Nickeil Alexander-Walker from Virginia. I accidentally spelled his name wrong. There's an I between the E and the L. But that's besides the point. The Jazz, I think, need to improve their bench. And yeah, they don't need a shooting guard. They have Donovan Mitchell. But who is their backup shooting guard? I have no idea. So that can be Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Very good year this year for the Hokie Pokies. Around 16.6 points, 4.1 boards, 3.9 assists. Heck, you could even have him as the backup point guard. Who's their backup point guard? Do they still have Raul Neto? I don't know. It might be him. But overall, very solid wing. 6'5". Has potential to play point guard. I think he's a good enough playmaker. He's a good enough passer. He's very solid as a scorer as well. Shooting around 48% from the field, 38% from 3. Shooting almost 5 threes a game. So he has a solid jump shot. And I think he could be a very good 3-and-D player. Very good at defense as well, 1.9 steals a game. And overall, I think he's a very well-rounded player. Doesn't have crazy upside, but for the 20th pick, for a team like the Jazz, who is always going to be good, but you never really think of him as a contender, this can be that type of guy who makes their bench one of the better ones in the league. And who knows, maybe they'll be a contender soon. The 21st pick, the Portland Trailblazers select Grant Williams from Tennessee. Williams has been so productive in his college career for Tennessee. Absolutely a phenomenal player, smooth around the basket, good on defense. And the Blazers, they need an extra big man along with Jusuf Nurkic, who I really like. Very talented overall player. I believe their starting power forward is Al-Farouq Aminu, who has sort of developed the past few years after sort of looking like a bust, being picked in between Paul George and Gordon Hayward. The Blazers get themselves a really nice front court in Williams and Nurkic, and now all they need is one more wing, and then that's a really good starting five. With the 22nd pick, the Boston Celtics select Coby White from North Carolina. Kyrie Irving doesn't look like he'll be back next year. There's still a chance. Terry Rozier is also a restricted free agent. So the Celtics may need to get themselves a new point guard, and that can be Coby White, who has had a very underrated season this year for the Tar Heels, and he has one of the best hairdos in college basketball. 16.3 points, 4.1 boards, 3.2 rebounds, pretty efficient shooting as a freshman. He's been super productive this year for UNC, one of the main reasons why that they've been so good as of lately, so good in ACC play, and one of the main reasons why they'll probably be a number one seed. White has been very underrated. He doesn't get talked about enough, I feel like, and I really like his upside, and that's something that the Celtics are going to need. With all the talent on their starting lineup, they can't have a meh player starting, especially at point guard, and if White develops, this pick could be a steal. The 23rd pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Daniel Gafford, center, Arkansas. Yeah, they have Steven Adams, who's a good player, but I think Gafford is versatile enough to move to the 4. His only problem is he can't really shoot, but he does everything else right. Very good in the low post on offense as well as defense, and he's been a very dominant player the past 2 seasons for Arkansas. Probably could have maybe been a lottery pick last year. That might be sort of a stretch. Definitely would have gone in the top 20. And I think staying in school may have made his stock go down just a tiny bit. Not too bad. If he plays well in conference play, if Arkansas makes the tournament, which I don't think they're really out of it, but I don't know if it's necessarily likely, I think Gafford can improve his stock that way, and this could be a really nice value pick at 23. The 24th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Tyler Herro from the University of Kentucky. The Cavs need some shooting, as one of the main reasons why they've been so good the past few years is obviously LeBron James, but other than him, they've had guys who can shoot the ball. Kyrie Irving was a good shooter. Kevin Love was a good shooter, and they had guys like Kyle Korver and J.R. Smith who could stretch the floor. All of those guys, except for Kevin Love, are gone now. Colin Sexton and R.J. Barrett are okay shooters, but not special. So you're getting Herro, who has been very good at spacing the floor for Kentucky and their offense. One of the main reasons why their offense has been so productive this year. And I like his upside as a scorer, which I'd say is definitely his best quality. And I think this is a nice pick for Cleveland. The 25th pick, the Philadelphia 76ers select Matisse Thybulle from Washington. The senior ended up winning Pac-12 Player of the Year. And if you look at his stats, they're not particularly impressive. 9.5 points, 3.1 boards, 2.2 assists. But he is so good on the defensive end of the floor. In 30.9 minutes, he's put up 3.5 steals, 2.2 blocks, and he has all defensive potential. Reminds me sort of Tony Allen in a way. And the 76ers need help in their perimeter defense. Jimmy Butler's good, but he might go. And J.J. Redick is a liability on defense. So getting someone like Thybulle, who is phenomenal at that end of the floor, I think makes a ton of sense for Philadelphia. Outside of Joel Embiid, they don't have any great defenders, and Thybulle has a chance to become an all-defensive member very, very early in his career. The 26th pick, the Indiana Pacers select KZ Okpala from Stanford. Really nice values. KZ has been excellent this year for the Cardinals, 17.1 points, 5.8 boards on somewhat efficient shooting. He should be good wing depth off the bench, as Bojan Bogdanovic, I want to say he's a free agent. If not, he has 1 year left. Tyreke Evans, I think he signed a 1-year deal too. Once again, don't quote me on that. So they could use some more wing depth. And I think Okpala could be a solid 3-and-D type player. The 27th pick, the Brooklyn Nets select P.J. Washington from Kentucky. Yes, I have been going with Jontay Porter earlier. However, they need some depth at big man. I believe they have Ed Davis. That's about it there. So getting someone like P.J. Washington makes a ton of sense, especially if Porter doesn't pan out. As a sophomore, Washington's putting up around 15 and 7.5. He's a very solid offensive player. His efficiency inside, I think, needs to improve. However, he has a solid jump shot from mid-range as well as 3, shooting 42% from Atlanta far away this year. 1 for 2.3 a game, which isn't bad. And on defense, he's shown signs of improvement. I think he's somewhat versatile. You can put him on the perimeter as well as inside. And I think he's a very well-rounded player. 28th pick, the Golden State Warriors select Goga Bitadze from the Republic of Georgia. Bitadze, he's raw, but I like his offensive potential, his scoring potential, and I think that's the best part about his game. Solid production over in Europe, not great, might stay in Europe for another year or two, which is why this pick makes a ton of sense. The Warriors have 3 max-level free agents, debatably max, and KD, Clay, and DeMarcus Cousins, and they need as much cap space as they can get. Clay is likely staying, however, he could go to LA. Boogie, who the hell knows what he's doing. And then Kevin Durant is a giant question mark. Could stay in Golden State, could go to the Knicks, could shock us and go to one of the LA teams. But not just for that reason, Bitadze has upside. As I said, I'd be surprised if Boogie stays in Golden State, and they will need a center. And yeah, he's not going to start next year. He might not even play for them next year. He might still be in Europe. And they have someone like Jordan Bell who can be a solid placeholder. However, for the long term, someone of his offensive ability makes plenty of sense here at 28. The 29th pick, the San Antonio Spurs select Dedrick Lawson from Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. So the Spurs went with a project with their first rounder, and now this is a pick they got in the Kawhi DeMar DeRozan trade. So Dedrick Lawson, someone who I think will contribute right away. He has been phenomenal for Kansas. Really the only consistent player that my Jayhawks have had, putting around 19 points, 10.5 boards for the Jayhawks, as he's a very talented, well-rounded player. He's a solid scorer. He's solid on defense, and I think his well-rounded ability of doing pretty much everything for this team, I think he could be well in San Antonio. I just said that Dedrick Lawson could be well in San Antonio. Top-notch grammar. Anyway, with the 30th pick, the Milwaukee Bucks select Charles Bassey from Western Kentucky. My favorite mid-major team, go Hilltoppers, just because of the name. As the Hilltoppers might make the tournament this year, they are going to be playing in the Conference USA Championship. Who they're playing is to be determined, and one of the main reasons for that is Bassey, putting up around 15 points a game. He's not really great when it comes to shooting the ball. 9 for 18 from 3, so he's tried, and he's made a decent bit. He has potential as a jump shooter, where someone like Daniel Gafford hasn't even tried yet. Very productive for the Hilltoppers, putting also around 10 boards a game. Very efficient, 63% from the field. And he's been solid on defense, 2.5 blocks a game, which is very impressive. Solid frame, 6'11", 245. I just think he needs to round out his offensive and defensive game. He has potential, but it's okay for the Bucks to develop him. Yeah, they're not great at center right now. They have Brook Lopez, who's been good, but he's a free agent, and I don't know how much the Bucks are willing to pay him. So Bassey could have a pretty big role right away. I don't think he's starting caliber yet, but I could see him getting playing time on one of the best teams in the NBA. So that'll end this video. Hope you all enjoy NFL Mock Draft this weekend. Stay tuned for that. Have a good one.